It is now Women's History Month, and we're sure to see floods of tributes to the iconic heroines throughout pop culture. Your Wonder Womans, your Disney princesses, Ellen Ripley's, Buffy's, Jackie Brown's. But I have my own collection of favourite heroines that no one talks enough about.
You sure kept the home fires burning, thank you.
I'm one of those people that isn't really in the mood for the epidemic of strong female characters that can get extremely dull after the 50th time you've seen one.
We're all cursed.
I prefer characters that get to be flawed, quirky, or contribute to the plot with methods besides inexplicable battle prowess.
Don't you think we should have some sort of a plan?
So here's a random selection of a few unsung heroines that deserve way more credit.
I closed in Trinidad 3 weeks ago. I'm just cruising about the island.
I won't stay too long on this one since I did a whole video on Daughter of Shanghai ages ago.
You killed my father.
But for those who don't know, it's a B-movie from 1937 featuring the rare thing in Hollywood known as an Asian female who's non-exoticized, unstereotypical, and engagingly proactive.
It's possible, isn't it? I can get information that Mr. Lee can't get.
Ying gets out of many tough situations with her cleverness and quick thinking, in an era where it was often too easy to turn the female lead into a helpless captive to prop up the male hero. And sure, she ends up realistically in trouble and need of help, but not in a way that feels demeaning. It's going to be a recurring thing on this list that I like heroines who can be strong and still fallible, as there are many different kinds of strength.
Whatever you think, this.
And although Daughter of Shanghai isn't as high budget as Anime Wong's better known films, it's honestly just great to see that she actually got to play a lead who simply took charge and shaped her own fate.
For you're just another packet rat aboard the Nellie B.
First of all, can we agree that this is just a fantastic name?
What's her name?
Loxy.
Loxy.
Second, Reap the Wild Wind is often called Cecil B. DeMille's answer to Gone with the Wind, only without a female lead who's an abusive sociopath.
I take it you prefer the rough ways of your Key West pirates.
Shame we can't say the same about the men or the racial issues.
The door's right over there, Mr. Cutler. And it's open.
But Loxy makes for an unexpectedly great heroine.
Oh, what a wonderful pair of performing dogs.
The trope is simple, spirited young lady ahead of her time, but Loxy is a lot of fun.
Where would any of your cargoes be if it weren't for me and my ships?
Maybe still afloat.
Witty, proactive, and not ashamed of what makes her unconventional.
You mama say you ain't going.
The film shows a side to these kinds of period females that I don't often see.
What's Drusilla going to tell the family about you when she gets back to Havana?
We can't run a salvage business without salvage.
Loxy does run a ship salvaging business and is quite tomboyish, but she's also aware of the advantages available to her as a woman.
Because I can wrap that Steve Tolliver around my little finger, and I'm going to do it.
She's expected to attend luncheons and dance with various gentlemen, but she shows great initiative in using these functions to make connections and negotiate things to improve her family's business.
Well, if I played up to you, it was so you wouldn't break Jack, that's all.
I also find it interesting how unangsty she is about being tomboyish.
Loxy, I forbid you.
The Cutlers won't pick the bones of this wreck if I can help it.
She gets sighs and complaints whenever she salvages a ship, but she takes it all in stride and is very dedicated to her work.
Tomorrow's fallen astern, Captain Bill will speak the wreck ahead of them all.
And since wearing fancy dresses and going out would be expected in that time period, she's able to be as feminine as she can stand and have fun in her own way.
Perhaps a breath of Key West would be refreshing. To all of us.
My favourite scene in this will always be when she's called on to sing.
Miss Claiborne is going to sing one of those sweet ballads of Key West.
And ends up...
For the bosun is a dirty son of the shiny, briny blue.
There's even a sequence where she hears that Steve's in danger of being shanghaied and facilitates the rescue.
I'm going with you. I don't care what he's done. He doesn't deserve what Cutler do to him.
She gets to be involved in the fighting too.
Legs are 2 inches longer.
Oh, you dog! Separate.
Loxy even gets to make a big mistake in the second act that allows the villain to pull off his evil plan.
But he's charging Steve with something he didn't do.
Sure, she's sidelined a bit in the last sequence, but I honestly find Loxy the most engaging part of the whole film. And that's including the battle with the giant squid.
But Auntie, there's still 20 more verses.
Oh my goodness.
There's also something very satisfying about seeing someone sassing Hedda Hopper on camera.
I don't know whether we're the Three Musketeers or the Three Blind Mice.
The Harvey Girls is a lesser-known Judy Garland musical from 1946.
And then I went out in the wide, wide world.
Parts of it may just be Meet Me in St. Louis recycled, but I do come away really loving Judy's character Susan.
One steak, very rare.
While it's mainly an excuse to get as many talents like Ray Bolger, Virginia O'Brien and Kenny Baker showcasing their stuff, the main plot is a young woman's journey to an arranged marriage that she decides not to go through with for, reasons, and takes up a career as a waitress at the new Harvey House restaurant.
We got a lot of hungry people over there waiting to be served. And I don't want to hurt anybody, honestly, I don't.
Susan would get a spot on this list purely because of this ungodly fantastic scene where she discovers the rival saloon has stolen all their meat, and so...
Lady, your meat's in there.
I don't want to be one of those guys who has to explain why something's funny, so hopefully the magnificence of this scene speaks for itself.
I just want to thank you all. Oh my. Did I do that?
Uh-huh.
Judy, of course, is best known for her singing, and she gets her showcase there too in this Oscar-winning number.
When I ever took a ride on the Santa Fe,
which she nailed on the first take.
on the Santa and the Santa Fe.
And It's a Great Big World is on my other list of top musical numbers.
My goodness me, it's a great big world.
But the Harvey Girls helped show off her skills as a comedian too.
Thank you very much.
And how does the movie resolve the conflict between wholesome Susan and her vampy romantic rival M?
I probably acted like a snob about girls like you. I mean, what I thought girls like you were like. And after all, it's only a matter of style, isn't it?
Showing that different forms of entertainment can coexist and neither is inherently wrong and it's all down to the choice of the performer?
I mean, some people wear one kind of dress and other people wear another.
Add that to the collection of female characters with distinct personalities and differences, and it's almost like the Harvey Girls is saying that there's no wrong way to be a woman.
But if they are killed, I will die. And so will Prince Prospero.
Here we have one of the famous Roger Corman-Vincent Price collaborations to create a whole film out of an Edgar Allan Poe short story. And while The Pit and the Pendulum will always be my number one, I came away from The Masque of the Red Death really loving it.
The Red Death?
I mentioned Francesca briefly in my video, Does Horror Have a Women Problem? And how she was surprisingly proactive.
No, I beg of you! Mercy, mercy!
She makes her first appearance when the evil Prospero is about to execute her father and lover, begging for their lives.
What do you want of me, Francesca?
Forgive them! Forgive them!
And because of this bravery, the three of them are spared when the village is burned to the ground. All are then held prisoner in the castle, Gino and Ludovico thrown in the dungeons, while Francesca becomes Prospero's platonic kept woman. And she spends most of the film trying to rescue the two of them.
I will do what I must to save my men.
British horror in the 60s tended to do two things to its women. And I was surprised that this one did neither.
Why do you hide yourself?
It's not right that you should look at me.
It inverts the gender roles by having Gino and Ludovico as the captives, while Francesca repeatedly tries to save them.
Gino, my father, where are they?
And outside of that, the movie is a battle of wills, as Prospero tries to corrupt her and Francesca holds on to her strong Christian faith.
But you need no doors to find God. If you believe...
Believe?
And I find it quite compelling that we have a character who spends her screen time in a near constant state of terror, and yet still tries to do whatever she can to help people. There's a scene where she has to walk past the cells of all Prospero's tortured prisoners, and despite her fear, she carries on because she has to free the others.
Quick, we must hurry to the battlements. The guard there will help us.
A kind of bravery that isn't often shown.
War, disease, and death. They rule this world.
There is also love and life and hope.
Very little hope, I assure you.
Another interpretation of Francesca is that she weaponizes her goodness and faith as the only way to resist how Prospero tries to corrupt her.
This girl. In all my life, I've never met anyone whose faith rivaled mine.
And she's rewarded for this goodness when Prospero asks the Red Death to spare her in the climax.
Spare her to me.
A charitable request, a rare thing with you, Prospero.
And it's a personal touch I like that Francesca's farewell shows that she has some sympathy for this crazy prince. And hey, Juliana comes up with the perfectly rational plan to get rid of her romantic rival by helping her escape. That's new.
You must make your own way. Now go.
Overall, just watch The Masque of the Red Death. Even with the bold pageantry that is the climax, the whole thing is great.
Watch out, girl. Hissy fit.
Congrats to Kirsten Dunst on her first Oscar nomination this year, but my introduction to her was either Jumanji or this little baby.
You rescued me.
Anytime.
Let's go get those creeps.
Small Soldiers is my go-to film to watch if you want something where the 90s are screaming out at you.
What are they doing? Psychological warfare.
One thing the 90s did very well with its popcorn films is that even if a female character was in there as the love interest, she still got to be involved in the adventures.
You've done this before.
Once or twice.
Alan, our lead, is the vanilla good guy surrounded by bigger personalities, and the girl next door gets to be one of those.
Always hate these things. Oh, humanity.
I should clarify, this movie is not going for high art, and that is a-okay.
Hello, Dolly.
Christy is simple, a budding N-log who's somewhat ashamed of her girly streak, which amounts to a staggering collection of Barbie knockoffs.
They buy you those stupid Wendy dolls.
All right, Timmy.
The movie validates her rejection of gender norms when all the dolls come to life and have to be smashed up in what's undoubtedly my favourite scene in the whole thing.
She's got a baton. It's a baton death march. She's gone coastal.
What's interesting about Christy is that the movie plays the damsel in distress trope with her, since the commandos using her as a hostage for Alan marks the midpoint. And once she's freed, she gets to contribute to the action just the same as anyone else, and the film doesn't make a big deal about it. Alan himself ends up in trouble and needs Christy's help plenty of times too.
Is this gonna be a pattern for our relationship?
As the years have gone by and early 2010s pop feminism becomes even cringier, I've been looking back on the attitude towards the damsel in distress and reflecting on works that actually do it well.
It's our turn to play with you.
Small Soldiers is one of those, since the one in distress is helped out of it relatively quickly and gets to enter the plot in her own right afterwards. But overall, Small Soldiers is one of those movies that gives all of its cast members something, and everyone gets to be involved in the glorious final battle. The mothers are also quite brilliant.
I love this song.
And the Gwendy dolls.
Don't hate me because I'm beautiful.
Let's just say that Sarah Michelle Gellar will be featuring a lot on this list.
What exactly is the plan? I mean, we're just gonna ring the doorbell and say we killed your son and we're in the neighborhood, so...
I've often been tempted to do a video on I Know What You Did Last Summer, but I don't think I can say any more than standard gushing about female lead number 2.
How's my hair?
Hurricane-proof.
Hey!
This 1997 slasher movie was the rare thing of its kind to be wholly female-driven.
Somebody knows, Helen. Help.
Julie and Helen take prominence, do most of the sleuthing, and were kept in suspense over whether they survive.
What if they recognize us? They could have a gun, shoot us dead.
It's been a year, Helen. They could have done that already.
Unfortunately, you're left not really caring so much about Julie.
Yeah, if that'll help you sleep at night.
While there are the makings of a compelling character, she's basically a typical final girl, and I don't play to Jennifer Love Hewitt's strengths.
Helen, we killed a man and then ruined the lives of everyone he knew.
I don't think we're that powerful, Julie.
Helen, meanwhile, has a more interesting character arc.
Through art, I shall serve my country.
A high school graduate who begins the movie as a beauty queen ready to take on the world, only for guilt to derail her actress dreams.
What happened to New York?
I went. For a while, it didn't really work out.
In the 90s, this kind of character only showed up as a villain or foil for our not-like-other-girls lead. But what helps make Helen more interesting than Julie is that she's the most conflicted about the accident.
Let's just pretend we were never here.
She's initially willing to go to the police, but gets convinced to cover their tracks if they'll get away with it. And she's the one who helps Julie solve the mystery, while also trying to come to terms with what they did.
Maybe he blamed himself. Maybe he was sitting in the road waiting for us to hit him.
And despite how psychologically tortured she is over the course of the movie, she demonstrates that she's stronger than she seems.
There's been a murder, and you're gonna fry in hell if you ignore it.
This is a brilliant redemption arc that the filmmakers probably would have realised the potential of if they didn't just have 6 months to get the thing ready.
You're giving us way too much credit.
And Sarah Michelle Gellar turns in a very heartfelt performance.
What happened between us? We used to be best friends.
She herself is often way too hard on her own skills, saying that she only has the range to play Sarah in a costume. But this is a different role from Buffy Summers, and she brings the softness required for a more feminine character.
I miss you.
And that enhances the famous chase, requiring you to believe she's both in danger and capable of fighting back. It's a sore spot for many, me included, that she didn't get to live after all she went through, and her surviving would have made it a stronger story.
Is little Miss Croaker getting sautéed tonight?
Oh, a wit with a wit.
These are some really frustrating decisions, but let it not be said we don't have a nice character in here that just didn't get to reach her full potential.
You know, Jodie Foster tried this and a skin-ripping serial killer answered the door.
So yes, I'm officially on the Justice for Helen bandwagon.
If you ever come close to me again, I will kill you.
Tris.
You need to stay away from me.
It's a good thing I went in order of release so I could make it to this entry with something resembling credibility.
You are a coward.
But you know what? It's 2022. Cringe culture is dead, and I am not ashamed to admit I was a Divergent geek back in the day, even being one of the 3 people that liked the Allegiant movie. First of all, Shailene Woodley is perfect casting.
Why do you say that?
You know why.
And sure, she's since moved on to more highbrow stuff, but this is what made her one of my acting idols, and I feel it's getting redundant to analyse what's simply a very good performance done with a lot of care and respect for the source material.
My name's Tris.
First jumper, Tris!
Even without the acting, Tris is a character I really found myself getting behind.
Who let you out?
I did.
First arriving in the Dauntless faction, after a lifetime in a non-violent environment and simple diet, she's understandably pretty terrible at combat.
Have you seen the scoreboard? Where am I? You're below the line.
As someone who spent 4 years in pro wrestling and dabbled in other forms of combat training, I can appreciate that the movie doesn't sugarcoat the initial days.
You're weak. You have no muscle.
Tris loses her fights, doesn't know how to shoot a gun, and is allowed to just fail repeatedly.
Eric says you're done.
What?
We saw what Tris went through done earlier with Mulan, but I can love both.
She's not gonna shoot me.
I think you might be overestimating my character.
The key thing that makes Tris great is that she identifies where she's going wrong, puts in the effort, and has to really grind to improve.
Might take it easy on you if you cry.
Come on, Tris.
It's still quite rare to see female characters be allowed to actually work for their success, instead of just being automatically good and held back by one-dimensional antagonists. And this is true to real life. I've seen people go from scared trainees to competing for big promotions, all through their thirst to improve.
And as soon as all the others find out, they're gonna kill me.
I'm not gonna let that happen.
I also remember thinking that the relationship between Tris and Four might be one of the healthiest I've seen in these YA adaptations.
I don't want to go too fast.
Considering he respects her boundaries, helps keep her secret, and literally lets her inside his head to reveal his own fears and trauma.
But now you just want to let me inside of your head?
Aren't you afraid of that?
You're not?
It just feels like the right way to develop a compelling action couple.
It's okay. I love you. It's okay.
And while the second film was my least favourite, I like that Tris has to struggle with the trauma of other people around her getting killed, and she confronts Janine in spite of her fears because she can't take any more innocent deaths.
And no one will ever forgive you for what you've done. You're wrong.
The simulation climax is a bit trippy, but I think it's worth it for this moment.
Because I will.
And all I can say about the third film is that this moment is way too cool. And now, we move from chronological order to an actual top 3. But I feel I should give some honourable mentions first.
I don't know how it is in China, but in America, for girls kicking your ass, you do not have to be a gentleman.
How is she still standing?
Bitch isn't standing now.
Well, for one thing, they're driving a truck. Oh, and shooting guns.
know that light burns in all of you!
A demon. I turned into a raging she-demon.
Would you ever kiss the weird girl?
Okay, here's the undoubtedly most recent one on the list, but hey, I make the rules after all.
You bled on the bone. They're after you. Get ready to run. No, Cindy, no! No!
Fear Street was my big obsession last year, and despite some god-awful Irish accents in 1666, the whole thing was a near-perfect viewing experience.
Because that's what happens when you live in Shadyside.
My preferred film in the trilogy is 1978, and a big reason for that is the magnificence of this gal.
I'm out. They just tried to murder me.
I'll have to admit, I was introduced to Sadie Sink through this rather than Stranger Things, and after watching both, I extremely biasedly say that Ziggy is the superior character and performance.
I want to be the kid who likes spiders and Stephen King and...
And the weird girl from Shadyside.
Sadie Sink kills this role, and it wasn't an easy one to slip into, considering it's part 2 of a trilogy, and she has to lead a whole new set of characters.
It's not horrible if it's true.
Ziggy is unashamedly flawed in a way a lot of heroines aren't allowed to be, lest we get accusations of bad role model.
I didn't do it.
Oh yeah? Just like you didn't set the camp flag on fire? Or let out the camp rabbits? Or graffiti the outhouse stalls?
But rather than trying to present a downright horrible person as a flawed heroine, we're able to see where Ziggy is coming from and understand her instantly, while also immediately seeing her virtues.
There was a time when things were good between us. When my dad was around, my mom was happy.
Ziggy is a wonderfully complicated character.
Should probably have Nurse Lane check that burnout.
No, I think I'm just gonna let it get infected and die.
Being willing to shower her she-demon of a bully with various insects, but still wanting to save her from psycho killers. Hating most of the world for shunning her, but still capable of loving those who show her kindness. And being able to be both terrified and fearless in tense situations.
Just let my sister live! Just let my sister live!
Fear Street does it right with a whole collection of different females, Cindy and Alice also being engaging characters in their own right, and of course Dina, Kate and Sam in the other films.
That's what they say.
Ziggy is the best of the bunch though, and I personally love that the movie introduces an element of classical tragedy not often used in the slasher genre, where you spend most of the runtime believing Ziggy is going to be killed.
Wait, you're Ziggy?
Yes, I was one who didn't see the twist coming.
It's Christine. Her real name.
And the tension was expertly played, with just enough guessing to make you hope she might make it.
Everything turns to shit eventually.
I feel like Lee Janiak learned from the mistakes made with Helen and I Know What You Did Last Summer with regards to which death serves the story, since although Cindy being the one to die is certainly sad, it feels earned and necessary for the narrative, and appropriately tragic, without feeling like the character was cheated out of her fate.
She sacrificed herself for nothing.
I loved pretty much everything about Fear Street, and it just goes to show that horror is the genre to look at if you want to see something fresh in terms of modern heroines.
You give it 1 hour, maybe 2, keep a weather eye open and you will see white sails on that horizon.
Pirates of the Caribbean is one of those franchises that had some lackluster sequels tarnish the reputation of the entry that got the ball rolling, because Curse of the Black Pearl is not just the best one in the franchise, but a legitimately great movie in its own right.
That's it?
Waste not.
Elizabeth got a bizarre level of hate in the 2000s, likely associated with the direction her character went in the sequels, and the overexposure backlash of Keira Knightley, but it's basically 2 decades later, and I will happily stand behind Elizabeth as one of the great underrated heroines of the day.
Like pain. Try wearing a corset.
What I can note about Pirates of the Caribbean is how the first film at least uses tropes that were ripe for pop feminist criticism by the end of the decade, but knows how to play them well.
You're pirates. Hang the code and hang the rules. They're more like guidelines anyway.
Elizabeth is the only female lead versus 3 other men, and she is the grounded rational one to offset the pirates' wackier personalities, not to mention having a romance subplot. But for one, Elizabeth isn't a token, she's an essential part of the story.
I recognize this ship. I saw it 8 years ago on the crossing from England.
She represents the audience being introduced to this fantastical world of zombie pirates and Aztec curses, grounding the film as a heroic presence against a bunch of backstabbers and criminals.
I need your help, come on!
And the movie doesn't shove the not like other girls or spirited lady ahead of her time tropes at you.
I had a dream about you last night.
About me? Is that entirely proper for you to...
Elizabeth's love of pirate stories are presented as a legitimate thing for girls to be interested in, without having to demonize femininity.
I'm told it's the latest fashion in London.
Well, women in London must have learnt not to breathe.
Completely. They're also vital to the story, since Elizabeth sets off the plot by trying to use her knowledge to play the game and getting in way over her head.
You have to take me to shore, according to the code of the Order of the Brethren.
First, your return to shore was not part of our negotiations nor our agreement, so I must do nothing.
And although she makes mistakes, she's also able to do plenty of things right, and contribute to the plot as a civilian.
We're shallower on the draft, right? Aye? Well then can't we lose them amongst those shoals?
Without getting out of nowhere sword-fighting skills.
We can use a few more ideas, lass!
It's your turn!
Keira Knightley is very well cast, and brings a maturity to Elizabeth that makes you forget she was only 17 at the time.
Yes! The rum is gone!
And she leans into the light comedy of a proper English Rose who secretly wants to be a pirate, not taking the character too seriously.
Bloody pirates!
In hindsight, it feels a bit like this is a parody of all the period roles she'd later end up typecast as.
Miss Sparrow, I'm not entirely sure that I've had enough rum to allow that kind of talk.
It says a lot that, up against Johnny Depp's career-defining performance as Jack Sparrow and Geoffrey Rush's solid character work, she holds her own, and has some impressive chemistry with everyone.
How many times must I ask you to call me Elizabeth?
At least once more, Miss Swann. As always.
And even if Elizabeth does end up with Will, both characters have their own stories and identities outside of the romance, which gets presented as a reward for both of them.
Here's a blacksmith.
No. He's a pirate.
There has been plenty of talk about how Pirates of the Caribbean was not expected to be anything more than a movie of the week, only narrowly avoiding going straight to video, so the filmmakers were not setting out to create the next big thing. And Elizabeth was not intended to be a generation's defining paragon of feminism.
You're daft, lady. You both are.
They just wrote a tight script with some fun characters, let the necessary people do their thing, and hey, we're still talking about it nearly 20 years later.
Bloody pirates!
It's one of those instances where all the right ingredients unexpectedly created magic.
Stop blowing holes in my ship!
And although I can't say I fully like the way Elizabeth's character evolved in the sequels, it won't kill my love for her first appearance. And now for the unsung belle of this unusual ball. I'm kidding, I swear.
Cat got your tongue?
Kidding again. I'll be serious now.
Oops.
The screenplay for 1999's The Mummy has a note in the character description about its female lead Evelyn, or Evy Carnahan. We're going to fall in love with her.
Didn't mean to scare you.
The only thing that scares me, Mr. O'Connell, are your manners.
Unless I'm mistaken, Academy Award-winning, Cambridge-educated, serious actress Rachel Weisz never played another role like this again.
You know, nasty little fellows such as yourself always get their comeuppance.
They do?
Oh, yes. Always.
Even in the sequel, Evie is maturer and more together, and the third film, well, what third film?
But I am proud of what I am.
And what is that?
But yeah, Evie is just fantastic.
I am a librarian.
No one here is concerned about making this character a strong role model for young girls.
Come on, Evie, faster.
Patience is a virtue.
A lot of what I loved about Elizabeth Swann comes into play here as well, namely that they let the heroine be able to contribute to the action in her own way, without feeling like a token.
Jonathan?
Yes?
I think you found something.
You could argue that Evie is the driving force of The Mummy, with her obsession with finding the Gold Book of Amun-Ra and earning the respect of the Bembridge scholars, serving as what gets the protagonists to Hamunaptra.
And the Bembridge scholars have rejected my application form again. They say I don't have enough experience in the field.
Evie's main character flaw, her impulsiveness, is what leads to her waking up Imhotep.
No harm ever came from reading a book.
And it ties into those aforementioned ambitions and motivations, and it's Evie who's pushing for them to stop Imhotep personally to make up for her earlier mistake.
I woke him up and I intend to stop him.
But Evie's impulsiveness gives way to a complementing virtue, mainly her quick thinking.
You can command them.
You have got to be joking.
Finish the inscription on the cover, idiot. Then you can control them.
While Rick brings the fighting prowess and field experience, Evie's ability to think on her feet gets them out of trouble plenty of times.
If he turns me into a mummy, you're the first one I'm coming after.
And she lets herself be captured by Imhotep, knowing it'll buy the others enough time to rescue her.
He still has to take me to Hamanaptra to perform the ritual.
She is right. Live today, fight tomorrow.
Her knowledge of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics allows her to use her intelligence to contribute to the heroics.
Oh yes, I see.
Including making Imhotep mortal so that Rick can kill him.
He's mortal.
In short, she's an active three-dimensional character whose contributions to the story feel organic rather than token.
Pembridge scholars never wrote about this.
And I love that the film lets its female lead kick up her heels and be shamelessly goofy and dorky. I mean, can you get more iconic than this library scene?
When Ramses destroyed Syria, that was an accident. You are a catastrophe!
And these light-hearted moments don't pigeonhole her into being the ditz or the useless one.
I'm the man. It's all up here.
Oh, that's comforting.
Evie has the best of both worlds. Sure, she technically ends up in the captive role, but look how the movie plays the damsel in distress trope.
Take my hand, and I will spare your friends.
And she gets to save them before they save her. Remember that quick thinking I mentioned earlier?
Oh, if you call that a kiss.
The chemistry between Rachel Weisz and Brendan Fraser is also on its own level completely, and it's one of the reasons for this film's enduring popularity.
I am going to kiss you, Mr. O'Connell.
I mean, it's that good, it's easy to forget that their romance kinda sort of starts with him giving an unwanted kiss through jail bars.
Oh, for heaven's sake, girl, it wasn't that good of a kiss anyway.
But even comparing this one to its first sequel, and it's clear that lightning just struck at the right time for the mummy.
Did I miss something? Are we going into battle?
Evie was everything ideal in a popcorn movie heroine rolled into one, managing to be escapist, relatable, and wildly entertaining.
Go, Evie! Go!
And if I may call back to the character description, the audience did indeed fall in love with her. So that was my incoherent ramblings edited into something resembling a list form. Feel free to sound off some of the heroines you feel deserve way more love, not just during this month, but all year round.
So heave ho, haul away, just the same as me. Boy, you're just another packet rat aboard the Nellie B. Oh, the